Welcome to Funding Small Farms, practical lessons from investors and entrepreneurs. So we're going to get down to the nuts and bolts. We've got a wonderful panel for you today, but I'd love to know, first of all, if you want to, come down and join us. We're going to be a much smaller group than the large group. But it'd be nice if we could tell who's the farmers? Any farmers? We got some farmers, okay. How about other food entrepreneurs? All right, look around, see who you are. It's a little hard for us to see because of the lighting, and how about potential investors or lenders? You thought you might come here and you might find somebody to make a loan to? And how about those of us that are already investors? Panel? Any farmers on the panel? Food entrepreneurs? Investors. So the panel itself, we represent funding small farmers as investors and as lenders, and you're going to find out from each one of us where we are on that spectrum. So we're going to each talk for about 4 to 5 minutes, try to give you nuts and bolts, at least a couple of examples, specific examples from our experience as investors, lenders, or borrowers, and then we're each going to share with you a key lesson, one takeaway that we want you to know that we've figured out so far given the work that we've done. And then we're going to get to your questions. We would love a discussion, so that's why we're going to speak for not too long. And you can use the usual, I think the mics are ready, so please do the same as usual, which is come on down so we can actually see you when you ask your questions. And then I'm going to scoot out. The booksellers have asked me to go and sign, so if you haven't got 15 copies yet of Financing Our Food Shed, which is a book that I wrote about slow money, I don't know why. And they're out there for sale today. So, who would like to go first? Chuck, take it away.
You guys are really spread out.
I know.
I'd really like to send a dog out to circle you up, bring you all right down here. I'm a beef producer from Vermont. We get our cattle fed on grass. No corn, ever. About 12 years ago, we started buying finished cattle from other farmers who also finished their cattle on grass. No corn, ever. And we created a brand called Hardwick Beef. We sell to natural food stores with butchers, not named Whole Foods, mostly in Boston and New York. A lot of our farmers, most of our farmers have been with us for about 10 years. A lot of our customers have been with us for about 10 years, and it's working, and it feels really good. I've also been running the Barred Rock Venture Capital Fund. Barred Rock is my favorite breed of chicken. We invest mostly in food and agriculture, and it's been great over the last 15 years to see the resurgence in New England, and it's wonderful to hear every time I hear that it's going on around the country. So I kind of see it from both sides, as a farmer, as an entrepreneur, and also as an investor with other people's money. A long time ago, I heard a guy say that he'd rather work with a good entrepreneur and a bad business plan than a good business plan, a bad entrepreneur. And it took me a long time to learn that lesson. You know, I used to really focus on business plans and look for a plan that had every question answered, that anticipated every possible contingency. And I didn't spend enough time with entrepreneurs and really trying to get to know them before moving ahead. I continue to learn that lesson, but I'm still, I'm getting better at it. And what I'd like to do is share a few things that I look for in entrepreneurs. This is the food business. The first thing I'm looking for is someone who really loves food. And it's funny how many people are in the food business that don't love food. The stuff we produce has to be really good. It has to be local isn't good enough. It has to be really good. In Vermont, we produce about 5% of our food, not very much, but 40% of the people say they buy local. My father used to say, if you want to see what a man really eats, clean out his truck. And take a look at the wrappers. So you have to have an entrepreneur who, who really loves food. My policy is no consumer research, no surveys ever. It's a policy. I want to work with someone who's got a really clear idea about what they're trying to accomplish in terms of flavor and texture and appearance, and isn't going to be, deflected by convention. You have to live your cheese. I heard someone say that once, I believe it. You have to live your cheese. You have to live your beef. You want to work with an entrepreneur who's really kind of scary about their passion for their product and their flavor and their taste. I was writing that, it sounded good, and then it occurred to me, that's who I am. I'm the scary guy at Hardwick Beef. I want someone who is willing, has a temperament and the ego to start small. And when you're investing, the first dollars you put in are tuition. It's tuition disguised as investment. And you want, if you start small enough, you can learn your lessons while you're small, and also the entrepreneur, the farmer, can learn all aspects of the business, can do all the jobs, and that will pay tremendous dividends down the road if you have someone who knows the jobs, can hold people accountable, can tell a line of bull when they hear it. And also, if you have someone who knows all the jobs, it's possible, more possible, to be creative about bypassing conventional elements of the infrastructure. We started Hardwick Beef with 2 animals and 1 customer, $4,000. And, we spent the first year learning our cuts of meat. But we were small enough that we were able to wriggle through. We don't use Monsanto because we don't use corn. We don't use Cargill and Tyson's because we use, we use a local slaughterhouse, but also we work with stores that have butchers. So we avoid the competitive disadvantage we have of a high cost of processing by working with customers for whom butchering is an attribute. We sell a different product from Tyson's. And it all, I think, was made possible because we started small and were able to figure that stuff out.
That's fun.
3.5 minutes.
Oh, there you go.
That's the time.
Oh, okay, sorry. All right, I'll pick up the pace. I'm looking for someone who can sell. You got to be able to sell. And I want to be able to watch, before investing in an entrepreneur, I like to watch her or him selling to their customers. I just want to know that they can get up on their feet, sell it, enjoy it, and are passionate about, about their product. I think the last thing is you want to invest in the best people you can find. You don't want to invest in people because you want to help them out. You want to invest in the best farmers, the best cooks, the best chefs, the best processors. You can find people who would be good at anything. They just happen to make this fortunate and wonderful decision to get into the food business. I never heard anybody feel sorry for a struggling video game developer, or a telecom entrepreneur. And I think you need to do the honorable, treat farm and food entrepreneurs the same way. We're trying to create a new industry. We're not trying to save one. And it really takes people who are amazing, people who are going to change your life just because you're around them. So make sure you find those people. Their creativity will create markets for other people who have a little less imagination to come behind them and make a living.
Nice, thank you. Excellent. All right.
So my name's Catherine Lucas. I'm the scary CEO and founder of Farmhouse Culture. We make raw fermented krauts and kimchis, organic, in Santa Cruz, California, and pretty soon in the middle of a cabbage field in Watsonville. We're pretty excited about moving out to that area and renovating a factory. Our farmer actually bought the property. In 2009, I met Woody at Santa Cruz Bookshop, I think it was, and he his book really excited me. I had taken my product to Slow Food Nation. I smoked jalapeno sauerkraut and gotten a lot of positive feedback, and I had the courage to really go for it and start a business, but I was not able to get money. This is when the economy was kind of crashing, and originally I thought I was going to be able to get an SBA loan for $50,000, and that pretty much disappeared. And so I was financing through friends and family, and my first slow loan was through the farmer that I was working with at the time, and they gave me $5,000 cash in a brown paper bag, and they'd written slow money on it. But we didn't know what slow money was yet, and they said, we just want you to return the money like this in a couple of years, with a little more in it. And I did. We still have the bag. I should frame it. But when I heard Woody talk and when I read the book, I realized that as an American girl, I was raised that you don't ask family and friends for money for business. That's just not part of the culture I was raised in. And his book gave me the courage to go to family and friends and business associates, because now I wasn't asking for you to fund my business, this great idea I had. I was asking you to help me save the world, and this was an opportunity for you, because I was going to build a food company that was sustainable, and I was only going to work with farmers that respected the land, and I was only going to work with employees who deserved fair wages. Well, all employees deserve fair wages, and I was going to build not just a great food company that made great food, but really a sustainable model. I really wanted to do that. And here you have an opportunity to invest in this great future. And it just completely turned my perspective around. And surprisingly, everybody said yes. I had a very basic business plan, and I paid a decent interest rate, like between 8 and 10%.
Whoa.
But I wanted to give people, they were taking a high risk. They were angels. I'd give them a copy of Slow Money before I'd ask them to invest. They'd get it, but that's how much the money was. And as I continued on, I just was never able to get any money from the bank. Just wasn't happening. Still can't get money from the bank, even though we double in growth every year, in sales every year. So I started talking to slow money investors like Arno, and it was pretty terrific. We met some angels along the way who became equity partners, but we really I didn't want to give away the entire house as I was trying to raise funds, and so debt was a really attractive option that I hadn't been able to secure yet. And so Arno has an investment group in the Bay Area, and through a process of meeting all of the individual investors, they came to our little kraut factory, we talked, we hung out, we believe we ate and we drank together. I think I cooked for you something. And we got to know each other, and it was just so neat. I didn't feel like I was, it wasn't like going to a bank and asking for a loan. These were people who wanted to know me also personally. They wanted to know that I was obsessed with making the best kraut on the planet. They wanted to know what my exit strategy was. And in this case, it didn't really matter. Exit strategy is so corporate. I mean, what if I don't have an exit strategy? What if I just want to have a company that sustains people and creates a healthy product? Do I have to have an exit strategy? So,
Forever and ever.
So the conversations were very different, and I realized that I wasn't just accessing financial capital, I was accessing intellectual and social capital. These people wanted to introduce me to their friend who knew their friend who did this, who could help me with distribution. And I felt all of a sudden like I was part of a team. I had this new team on my side. It's a very different experience than the 2 attempts I'd made to get loans from banks. That was a fairly humiliating process. And I loved what Wendell said the other day about the farmer who went in to try and get a loan, and did he have credit? No. Did he have personal assets? No. But show me your hands, And my hands stink like sauerkraut and kimchi. They're not calloused, but they're full of microbes because they were, busy making kraut and going to farmers markets and selling it and working 8 days a week for the first 5 years of the business. And so the royalty financing note that that I guess we created together has been a terrific option for us. And I'll let Arno talk a little bit more about it. It's a unique instrument, and I don't know how much detail we'll get into, but it really has worked well for our company. And I'm proud to say we had a year grace period before we had to make a payment, and I'm proud to say that we started making our payments this year. We pay them on time, and the shareholders, or the, I guess they're not really shareholders, are they? But the people who are receiving these interest payments, the people who trusted us, are now being rewarded. And that feels terrific. That feels so good. Oh, thank you, Arno.
Excellent. So you all are hitting this right at about 6 minutes, so help yourself, Arno.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. So Catherine was actually on stage at the last Slow Money Gathering in Boulder and was part of the entrepreneur showcase that just finished, and so it took us a little while, but we followed up and got a substantial amount of money in, and that investment had 3 changes in my life. Number one, before I met Catherine, I grew up in Germany and France, and with my accent you probably can tell, San Francisco. I hated sauerkraut. Wow. What I had to eat as a child is like, I never wanted to eat that stuff again. I tasted hers at one of our farm fests that we do in Slow Money, Northern California. Kicks ass. Second change is I actually I'm really proud and privileged to be associated with Catherine as a person and the business that she is building. It's really a very unique combination of mind and heart that actually grows that business and now into the field. It's just a privilege to be part of it. And number 3 is now after a year, I'm actually getting a quarterly check back, which is important because Slow Money is not just about a charity. So I'm getting actually a check back, which quite frankly is a little bit bigger than I thought it would be. So that's turned out to be very nice. So the reason that it's a little bit bigger than I thought it would be is that it's not a straight loan with fixed payments. We had a component in there, and she mentioned the term royalty arrangement. So there is a revenue participation. So if her business wasn't doing so good, the payments would be a little bit lower. Now her business is doing good, and the payments are a little bit higher. So it's tied to it. But we're not the man, so we don't have equity in farmhouse culture, and we don't tell her how to run her business, but we're interested that her business is doing good. So that was very incredibly rewarding. I'm eating a lot more sauerkraut and kimchi now as an outflow. And actually, I'm not paying for it like on an ongoing basis. And the reason why I want to bring this up is this is about funding small food businesses. So let's talk about credibles. So last year at the Slow Money Gathering, we introduced this concept of credibles, which is edible credits. So if you haven't heard about this before, so this is the first time then you will hear about edible credits. What it is, it's a very simple concept. Even people who cannot write big checks, normal, our tagline is, if you eat, you're an investor. If you eat, you're an investor, and we really mean that. So if you have certain local food businesses that you want to support, just pay an amount in advance. If you can do 100, if you can do more, 500. We have several families now that it's rolling who are already on their 4th or 5th funding of $1,000 for their local grocery store, which is independently owned in Northern California. Now it's being used in many businesses. It's over 100 businesses, 37 cities, 9 states. So far, it's super easy to do, to put money into a business and then eat it. And instead, it's basically a loan that you, as the eater investor, give to the business, but they don't have to pay it back in cash. Don't try this with your bank. You go to the bank and say, I'm coming to pay back my loan. Here's the bacon. So that wouldn't work, but like the customers come in, there is a nice app, by the way, for this, where you can track the balance, what's your balance of edible credits. that you still have, and you eat literally your balance down. So I recommend that for all businesses. I now have, I think, balances with businesses. I consider them tabs with a business. So I have a prepaid tab with over 20 businesses that are regularly frequent. I go in, get my lunch sandwich and say, put it on my account. And by the time I'm back at my desk, I have an email saying, you just ate $8.50 of your edible credits, and your new balance is. So I encourage you all, suggest the business that you want to do it with if you're an eater. If you have the business, contact me or go to credibles.co or download the app. It's very easy to do. And it's just like one thing I just want to say, it's like today I got a very sad news. One of the farms that we do this, so farmers do this and use Credibles at farmers markets, so people don't need to take out the wallet anymore. They just say, here's my name, or you know me, put it on my account. One of them, Deck Family Farm in Southern Oregon, actually had a fire on Sunday, so the barn burned down, equipment, a bull, and they also lost a lot of the alfalfa hay. So while I was sitting here, we were actually trying to put a special campaign together and ask the people, hey, and so they can ask their customer base, can you pay like a year's worth of your purchases in advance? That would actually help us to get basically literally raise the barn back up. And so that's a way for customers to step up, and it's not all donation. If you would ask them for a donation, maybe they would put in $100. If you ask them, can you prepay us now so we have the cash, they're willing to put in $1,000.
Arno, could you spell the name of that farm for us?
It's Deck Family Farm.
D-E-C-K?
D-E-C-K.
Deck Family Farm. So
Yeah.
I could buy some Credibles just in case I'm ever in that town, right?
You could, yes. Yeah, you'll find them on credibles.co, which is the
Okay.
website.
So we could all do that.
Yeah. So that was very unfortunate news that didn't exactly make my day today. And that's actually the other thing. Slow money and Credibles, like Incredibles came out of the slow money. It's not just about the money. It is about being connected together and says, hey, I'm with you. I'm not just a customer who comes in here sometime. It's community underwriting, basically. I'm placing a bet on the business that I want to see flourish in my community. And it goes to interesting things. We have like a seafood store in Oregon. They say if you go fund us at the highest level, which is, I think it was $2,000, not only do you get some extra credits as edible interest, we also take you out for a day of albacore fishing when we go out. So
Okay.
it's more about money. It's about being connected and saying,
Okay.
hey, we are in this community together.
Yeah, that's such a brilliant idea. Wow. Okay, I'll put the timer on for myself. Hi, my name is Carol Pepe Hewitt. I live in Pittsboro, North Carolina. And 4 years ago, 4.5 now, Woody Tash came to town and I heard him speak. I was already pretty much a local food addict and trying to live on a 100-mile diet, which isn't that hard actually in the Piedmont of North Carolina. And I was also very interested in small businesses. I started a business with my husband 30 years ago, and a loan from his brother for $15,000 was the reason we could actually get off the ground. And I only had to work 4 years for a corporation before I was able to move back and run the business with him rather than 20 years. But that loan was 13%, and it took us 10 years to pay it back, I think at about $100 a month, something like that. But at a certain point, we got our kids through college. About that time is when I heard Woody, and we had a little disposable income that wasn't going off to colleges, and I'm lucky enough now we've actually paid off our mortgage. So I've stopped sending money to SEPs and IRAs and all of those kinds of things, and what I do is I just pour it into my local food shed. Because I'm also matchmaking for North Carolina, I see all of the people that are interested in money. The emails come to me through the Slow Money website. And so, I can look for ones that I might loan to. We'll also hold gatherings where other people hear their stories and they might want to make a loan. So I want to tell you a couple that I've done. Mark and I now have about $100,000 that we've shifted into local food and farm enterprises, and about $30,000 of that has already come back. So these are texts coming my way. All right, so quickly, one is inorganic cotton. So we have a t-shirt design company in Burlington, North Carolina, TS Designs, write that down. If you ever have to buy a t-shirt for some nonprofit or some organization, you need to be buying it from TS Designs. They use organic cotton, but all of that cotton, in North Carolina, there isn't any organic cotton. They have to source that somewhere else, but at least the t-shirts are made in the United States, not in Pakistan, and then flown back and forth, this crazy way that we do our apparel. He convinced a farmer to grow some organic cotton, first time in the modern world, but when the cotton came off the field, he needed $30,000 right then. So I found him 5 people at $6,000 each. We called ourselves the Cotton Club. We bought that cotton. For a year, I was in commodities. I owned cotton, then I owned yarn, then I owned cloth, then I owned t-shirts, and within a year, I had all my money back. We did that the second year in a row. We had so much fun. That was Cotton Club number 2. And the third year, I'm sad to say, the weed and pressure was too great, and anyway, there was a lot of weather issues, and that year's cotton was not successful. The farmer is willing to keep trying at this. So that's amazing. If we could get cotton grown organically in the South, that would be astounding. I mean, it's kind of like asking a farmer to grow 100 acres of organic cotton is kind of like asking Exxon to make a gallon of biofuel. That's kind of so we did that one. And then I was on book tour in Asheville, North Carolina, which is about 4 hours from me, and a wonderful couple came to hear me. They are 4th generation farmers. They were doing fine at a sort of family living, but he was offered the chance to grow non-GMO soybeans and corn, but he needed a tractor for that. He really just wanted a used tractor. He's perfectly capable of fixing a used tractor, but no one would loan him money for that. So instead, the bank wanted to loan him $40,000 and buy him a brand new $40,000 tractor. So I went back 4 hours later. I didn't actually have a lender. I try to introduce people to each other and have them make friends in their own food sheds so they'll run into each other. But Old Fort, North Carolina, I mean, pretty much everybody in that town has the same last name he does. And anyway, he called me a few months later and he said, I found a tractor. I said, you really? He said, yeah, it's perfect. It's $6,000. And I said, great, I found you a lender. He said, really? I said, yeah, me. I love old tractors, don't you? And so I sent him a $6,000 tractor. I sent him $6,000, and I get a handwritten letter, with a check in it every month for $110, and his writing is just lovely, and it's just the sweetest thing in the world. So I actually have collateral on that, so if he stops paying me, I actually will own a tractor. But actually, when we bought our tractor for our property, for our business, we waited until we could afford a small but new one. So, but my husband's not particularly handy when it comes to fixing tractors. And the last one that I'll mention is I actually also did an equity project where we opened the 13th distillery in North Carolina, is in my town. What we've done is where there is wine, there is good wine, and there is not so good wine. But if you fortify that not so good wine, you can make a pretty good product, and it comes out like a port or a sherry or a Scuppernong dessert wine or an apple dessert wine. And so that's what we're doing. So one of the vineyards, we're sourcing a lot of juice and turning it into a distilled product. So that's a project that I have equity in, which is, I think, a really good choice because, in bad times people drink and in good times people drink. So I think I'm going to be safe on that one. So we talked about offering a key lesson. And I think the thing that I'm pitching right now, that I'm asking people to do, is to do something very revolutionary, something we were taught never to do as children, which is to talk openly about money. So that's why I've told you that we moved $100,000 and then I don't have a mortgage. And I mean, come on, Carol, stop. My kids would say, TMI. You know what that is? Too much information, Mom. But when we start breaking down that barrier, that veil of secrecy, it's a very revolutionary thing that will help us move and end classism, which is the 99 and the 1%. We can hold that in place if we just stay scared and just stay quiet. But we start talking openly and sharing this stuff and moving this money this way, and we can break that thing down. So that's my suggestion to you. Some of you know that I've walked up to you and said, are you an investor? And yeah, I am actually. Oh, good. Welcome. Nice to have you here. It's okay. So now you can applaud. So we would love questions. We can't really see you very well if you raise your hand. If you could come down to one of the mics. Let's have a few questions. And anything you want to know, we are happy to tell you. And it has to be a question, not a story. So if you want to share something about yourself, we'd love to talk to you about that later. But we really just need a very specific question that we can answer. Did you have a specific question?
Yes. Carol, from Asheville, but living in Indiana.
Okay.
And there is, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's a North Carolina lending agency that does microcredit to the most underserved.
Okay.
And
Probably
that's
self-help
done
credit
all over.
Yeah.
And-
Probably it's the Self-Help Credit Union. There's a couple more up in Asheville, but it's a very, very well-known and very well-established credit union. Thank you. Did you have a question?
Hi, Jake Davis, Missouri. I was just wondering if you all could talk. We heard the investing panel yesterday talk about downside risk and how they do due diligence, and it's very complicated and costly. I'd just be interested to hear your all's perspective about how you do due diligence from more of a interpersonal level or finance level or whichever you might comment on. So.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and I think we could each say there's a sentence about that. I'll tell you that depending on the loan size, if it's $2,000, $3,000, and I meet that person and I see that they really do have this business and they can tell me how they're going to make the money to pay me back, and they know what an amortization schedule is. They usually don't. I can't tell you, 90% of the people that have gotten slow money loans have never heard of that, but we show them that. I say, well, can you afford to pay me $72? So on those, I don't really pry very hard. If it's a larger one, $30,000, $50,000, then they are going to need a business plan, because the people that are going to loan to them, not necessarily me, they're going to ask for that. So I basically turn that over to the lender, and the lender can ask them whatever they want. If they want a credit report, they can ask for it. If they want it, but the borrower can say, I don't want to share that with you. So it's really up to the lender and the borrower as to how deep they want to go in that. That's in my experience. Arno?
Yeah, let me take a different stab at this from a perspective of edible credits. Because when you say there was an investing panel here, that is still a little bit in the mindset of the old investing. So if I say, if we need to come to a way where if you eat, you're an investor, I will ask the question earlier that Carol asked, do we have any investors in the room? So you could always theoretically be all on the panel. So if you do investing for the people, institutional investors who write basically checks for companies that they don't know yet, yes, you go through all this dating period of looking at spreadsheets and due diligence and credit assessment. If you do it from within a community, I always say it's like when I buy credibles, my first due diligence is done by my taste buds. If I don't like food from a food company, I'm not going to invest. Then I actually check with my neighbors or other people who are also customers of that business. What do you think? Will you go there more often? So I'm getting a sense, is this business around? So it's actually in a community intelligence, is actually very intuitive and sometimes instinctive how you can make an assessment. Will I take a stake in this business? And then you promote the hell out of it because now you feel like a stakeholder and they for sure will stay out longer. I used to be a bank executive. I would have loved to be able to look inside people's minds and see which small businesses would they support, because my people couldn't look into people's communities' minds, so they wouldn't underwrite a lot of businesses, so Catherine wouldn't get bank credit, but we are the freaking community, so we know what we want to eat. We know we hear from our customers what they would support. So I think this is a little bit also a mind shift in terms of how complex does investing really have to be if we can just do investing and then get paid back in edibles.
Chuck, you want to take a stab at that? You do investing.
Yeah, I think I must be the old style. I try to get to know somebody before they get to know me a little bit in terms of their product, watch them a little bit, talk to some of their customers. I very rarely make an investment in somebody who approaches me. I make friends with natural food stores and go to conferences and look for talent. and try to get to know that person a little bit before approaching. And sometimes we'll know somebody for a few years before we get to the point of doing something together. I mean, I've run a fund, but I only have seven investments. I also decided about 7 or 8 years ago that my temperament is best suited being the only investor in a business, where I'm, very much involved and a real partner. These businesses that are sort of A round, B round, C round, I mean, the only people that have influence are the ones that haven't invested yet.
That's really interesting.
And I had a reason to, I had a reason to read every issue of the Burlington, Vermont Free Press in 1924, about 10 years ago, for some other unrelated project. And in the business sections, which was unrelated to the project, I kept on reading about an entrepreneur launching, getting the new Ford dealership or just getting something going. And they would always talk then about the backer, who the backer was. And I like the idea of playing that role, because if I'm going to really help that person, I'm going to be introducing that person to my network. They're going to be representing me. I can't really be helpful to that person unless I freely introduce that person into my network. So yeah, credit report, friends, references, just surround that person. I mean, you are really, if you're making an equity investment in someone, this is going to be your 10, 15-year relationship, and you want to spend a lot of time, doing it. I made the mistake a few times early on looking for comfort by being in a group. And you just sort of have a whole bunch of people taking a cursory looking at something, and you end up taking comfort by the fact that you're not alone. I mean, what most investors hate most is looking like the fool. They don't mind losing money. They just don't want to look foolish doing it. And you don't look foolish if you're in a group. And it took me a while to develop, I guess, the maturity to look beyond that and to think for myself. But I think there's just no shortcuts. And if someone's going to rush you, they're not the right, And what really hurts some entrepreneurs is if you string them along, which is why it's really good if you can spend some time getting to know them before you get to the point of talking money. Because if it's going to take you a year or two to get to know somebody, it can really hurt them if you're stringing them along. So get to know them the best you can before you start talking about money.
Such interesting advice. Good advice. Yeah.
Can I say something really quickly before?
Oh, yeah, sure.
From the receiving end of having to go through the due diligence, what I thought was interesting is the questions that the group asked me were an opportunity to learn about things that I hadn't thought about before, where the questions from the bank were just flat. Just they wanted to know these basic things, and I had to fit in these metrics, these economic metrics, or I wasn't going to get credit. Where some of the questions that the group asked me were instructive, and I'd say, well, gosh, I don't know, what do you think? And it would open up a dialogue, and it would deepen my understanding of what I should be doing next. And so it was a really cooperative, collaborative experience, and not a humiliating experience like it was with the bank.
I just would add intuition, intuition, intuition. This is relationship lending. Get engaged with people you want to be engaged with, because you're going to have them in your life. Oh, go ahead.
I've so appreciated how you've matched people up around the state. And I saw that there was you have a fiscal sponsor. Was that something that happened pretty quickly? Is that a real facilitator an important thing to think about if one is trying to do such a thing? And was it difficult, or how do you go about finding such a sponsor?
Okay. So if you're interested in doing a slow money network, you don't have to have a fiscal sponsor. You don't have to have any money. I'm not a bank. I'm not a financial institution, so I can't charge anybody for any of these services. And it looked pretty quickly like we might have a few expenses. And so luckily in my county, the Abundance Foundation is a similar-minded small nonprofit, and they actually do act as an umbrella for a number of startup projects like Slow Money, where I just pay them a percentage, and for the little bit of money that goes back and forth, it's perfect. I don't have to do any auditing. I don't have to worry about the IRS. And our annual budget was, $5,000 the first year, then it was 10 and 12, and If we ever hit 30, it'll be astounding. So we're very small. The national organization, Slow Money National, will actually do that for slow money networks when they're getting started for the first 3 years. So it just gives you some place. Now, in some places like in North Carolina, Arno can speak to this, but if you don't have any money coming and going, you don't need that. It just gives you a place to do that. And so that was your one question. And what was the other one? That was it. Okay. Arno, you want to speak to what you did in California?
Yeah, I think like for the context of this discussion, I think the structure and the legal arrangements are actually not that important. And our local network in Northern California doesn't have any legal structure. We work with the National Slow Money Organization and just get things done. I mean, in general, I think what we have to do and what we want to do is actually always less complicated than we think it is. It's always so daunting, but quite frankly, once you realize that in your 401k or in your pension fund, you may actually have some S&P 500 index funds, and so you're an investor in Monsanto, because they're part of the S&P 500, in McDonald's and Nestle, and I think this outlook is way more complicated and daunting to me than trying to get the money going within communities.
And I would just add that, call me, call us. We'll completely help you. We'll walk you through this. We've done it. We love helping other networks get started around the country.
My name is Eric Welkening from Orange County, Virginia. We've kind of talked about the perspective from the investors' side. I was wondering if you could talk about maybe specific strategies that an entrepreneur could use to get connected to capital. I know you, as a matchmaker, may have experience doing that, but maybe for everyone else, what do you look for, or how have entrepreneurs come to you who have presented themselves in a way that you want to invest in them? So I was just wondering if you could talk about that.
Anybody can take this.
I think the thing that I encourage people to do most of all is just plain get going. Start your business, however small it is. Face the moment of truth with customers and have a product that you can share with people, even if you're doing it in your kitchen. The person who's going to invest in you is probably going to hear about you through someone else. So what I would do is manage your network. Get 10, 15, 20 people that you stay in touch with that have the potential to introduce you to somebody else. You're probably going to find an investor through an indirect route. So, managing yourself well with that group and letting them know that you're looking, that you're looking for money. I think friends, family, and I think the biggest thing, one thing I encourage a lot of people to do is, get your life squared away and have a part-time job that, where you can manage your life and you can run your business 2-3 days a week without having to, why sell a hunk of your business before you get going? Because the prices, you're going to be selling your business on the cheap. So the main advice I give people is to try to push that out as far as you can. Keep your day job.
So often people will contact me from somewhere in North Carolina, and they'll say, I want to start this, or maybe not start, but I have this project, and I don't actually know anybody in that part of North Carolina that I can introduce them to, but I'll say, well, do you have any customers or friends or family that have shown an interest in you? And often they'll say, yes, I do. I said, well, they can make you a loan as long as you're not asking a stranger. You can go ahead and have that discussion with them, and then have them call me. And all I do is tell them this can be done. I actually met with a family, the parents and the children, and the parents wanted to loan them $300,000 and just didn't know how to do it. And so I simply brought a blank promissory note to the table and said, you can do this. This is perfectly legal. That really? We don't have to do something complicated and get lawyers? Nope. And so it was as simple as helping facilitate that process with that little bit of technical information. And a lot of us in the slow money world, if you don't have a slow money person in your area, would be happy to just help with, that very low level of credibility. You know, letting your lender know. When I tell a lender, I've done 142 of these in North Carolina. This is not hard. You know, this is simple. They're like, oh, really? Okay, great. I'm so excited. I didn't know I could loan him money, but I wanted to. Yep, you can. So that's one thing. And the other quick piece of information I give every single person who's in business, you need the name, the address, the phone number, and the email address of every warm body you ever get close to. Because we started this 30 years ago. My husband and I started in business. We have 7,000 names and customers, and I send out 7,000 postcards 3 times a year. I hold an event, and we make 80% of our money during those events that are held because I know my customers. So if you can figure out who your customers are, you may someday want to talk to them. You know, you may use a crowdsourcing fund, or you may just tell them about a new product you've put out, or you may do a grand opening. Whatever it is, I can't encourage you enough. You know, get those contacts. That's the most valuable thing you own in your business is your mailing list.
I was really inspired when you said you took $15,000 and now you're to the point where you can invest in other people's businesses. Really, I just thought, how do you get there? But also, I mean, is there a place where investors hang out besides these conferences? Where, I mean, what do I type into Google to say, you know, there's these organizations that are interested in investing, where investors come? You know, like, what is that word that I put in Google?
Yeah, that is such a great question. Where do you live?
I live in Lexington right now.
Where?
Lexington, Kentucky. I'm from Louisville, though.
Lexington, okay. Anybody want to take a stab at that? Where do investors hang out, guys? They come here. They come here.
I probably give you just the other half of the answer that you probably didn't expect to hear, but it's like, if you have customers who eat, you have investors. So Google credibles. But I mean, but there's also another part of the answer, maybe. How do you find the people that you invite for the matchmaking? Where do you find them?
Yeah, so you have got a little slow money, not a little. You have Carrie has got a slow money network going here in Louisville. And if nobody has started one yet in Lexington, let it be you. And we'll help you. I'll drive over, Carrie will drive over, the Ohio people will come. I mean, everybody will help you. And basically, it's kind of like throwing a meetup and saying, okay, I want to hang out with anybody that likes to sit in greenish brown chairs, right? And some people will come to it. So that's one tool if that happens to be fairly active, and it also attracts generationally. It sometimes gets a little more variety of people when you use something like Meetup. But you could just do that. You know, I want to talk to people that are interested in farms and local foods. And if you've got a co-op, you know, you can get involved there. And then this whole thing about talking openly about money. So the guy that's doing the live streaming, hi Seth, did his first slow money loan when he was 26 years old. He lives in Durham, and he's a videographer, obviously. And he heard about slow money and said, I want to do this. And I knew about a couple that farmed, two women the same age as him, and he loaned them $2,000 to start an urban farm in Durham. So, yeah. I'm not really answering your question very well, but I would say you can do this. And once you start talking about it and building this network, people will find you and you will find people.
I also wanted to ask, how long did you plan your business before you started implementing that $15,000?
How long did I plan my business?
Yes. That's like...
You're talking about the $15,000 we borrowed? Mm-hmm. So my husband is a potter, and we moved to North Carolina for the clay, and we bought a very rundown farmhouse that was $30,000. It was a tear down. We moved in with the termites, and we lived there, you know, we've gradually fixed it up. And so the $15,000 was to buy supplies and boards and build a workshop and all the materials he needed to start his business, which I run. So I'm just the business head, and he's completely all the talent. So that was the business I've run with him for 30 years. And we paid that off, and, you know, we now have a reasonably comfortable, you know, kind of living. And I now use my disposable income to loan to other people.
Thank you.
I think, you know, one resource, I don't have an easy answer to that. I mean, that's sort of the genius behind what Woody's trying to accomplish here. one resource that I find incredibly helpful are the owners of independent natural food stores.
That's really true.
And they know who's coming in, and they know what their abilities are, and often they're making loans to farmers, and that may be a place to find. I mean, we all have our own. I'd be a little hesitant to say, "Hey, everybody, show up for coffee," because I'd want to know something more about the people I was working with. But you and I are different.
Hey, you know how?
But I think the natural food store owner.
Another place I've been hearing about loans recently is chefs.
Yep.
I got a text yesterday from a chef. Her mushroom supplier is in trouble. You know, it needs a little bit of money. And she said, "Can you help my mushroom supplier?" It's like, okay. And so I said, have him send me an email. And I probably will be able to get him the 2 or 3 or 4, you know. So hang out with some farm-to-table chefs because they know the farmers. They're building those
And
relationships.
you're really a truffle hound. I mean, one answer to the other question would be for the young man there who was looking for investment to make real good friends with the owner of that store. And that store makes a recommendation to you about him. You know, you're all going to be well served by that. So that store owner, so that kind of person I'm talking about, and if that may be the way.
Nice.
Linda Goodwin from Concord, North Carolina. And I would just say, can you talk about how to approach people that you want to lend money to? We have gone to small, locally owned grocery stores and natural food stores. We have gone to the local farmers that we've dealt with and bought from cooperatively for a decade and said, we believe in what you're doing. We believe in your business. We'd like to lend you money. We've gone to the Piedmont Farmers Market, the vendors there that we know well, that we trust, that we believe in how they're running their businesses. We've gone to the Cabarrus County Food Policy Committee, which I used to be on, and said, if you know people you believe in, because we trust these individuals, and if they have people to refer to us, they all look shocked and terrified and say, well, I'll think about it. And nobody gets back to us. We finally recently approached a chef, Cassie Parsons, who you know very well, and she said, yes, we'd love to have your money. But we find the farming community, maybe it's because I'm in Concord and not the Triangle or Asheville or Charlotte, but we find people are hesitant. Even people we know well, we don't go up to strangers, but we go up to people whose business we know and trust. How do you recommend we find them?
So I want everybody to answer this question, but you know, honestly, that's one of the things I do is I go into town and we host a slow money gathering, and it gets in the paper and it gets on the chat lists and it gets on the NPR, whatever. And suddenly the fact that this thing called slow money exists and loans are happening, the credibility, it's this concept, this movement that helps lender and borrower, you know, it just puts some sort of, what's the word I'm looking for?
I signed up for your email list years ago. And said, we would lend to anybody in North Carolina that sounds like a good risk, but have never been contacted
Good.
back.
Oh, gosh. Well, just come find me. Come
Okay.
find me. Come find me.
All right.
We'll fix this. We'll fix this. How do you feel about mushrooms? Go ahead. Did you have a thought about that?
No, I'd be interested in more questions.
Hi, my name's Roy Allen.
That's the work of it.
Is this working?
Yeah.
I guess it is.
And it's also, you know, people don't want welfare. It's pride. There's a lot of things that make it hard. It really is. But hey, can we give her a hand? I mean, you gotta love it. I mean, it's like, but.
I mean, I guess if nobody has another comment on this, I would say there is such a thing that I often tell entrepreneurs, you should not get as much money as you can. You should only get as much as you need, because that money creates a liability and can actually drag your business ultimately down. There's also money that is wrong. That's the wrong. You don't want the wrong investors. It's actually worse than having no investors. And so if there's a certain skepticism, because sometimes if you ask them, hey, do you want my money? It's almost like helping the old lady across the street, and later on you find out she was actually happy on the other side of the street, right? And she didn't really need to cross the street. So you want to be careful with this. But one thing you could do is actually, you could start the conversation, what do you mean can I pay my purchases for you like half a year or a year in advance? And you start that way, and you warm up to a relationship and create more familiarity.
And I've said yes to everybody who offered to borrow me money.
And the best loan is no loan at all. You know, ideally no debt, but interesting. Okay.
Hi, my name's Roy. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona, and Carol and Arno, I met you at 2011 in San Francisco. And what you don't know is because of that meeting, I went back to Phoenix, and I had a hard time talking to people like Carol, you said about money, because sometimes people are comfortable with it and sometimes they're not, but everybody eats. And so I started a meetup group called Artisan Food Guild, and we have 350 members, and they all eat, and some of them want to talk about money.
Great.
So that's how we kind of segued into talking to people about money. So the meetup thing is an interesting thing. But I was curious, you've talked a lot, I'm going to play devil's advocate, you talked a lot about relationship lending, but that takes time to develop a relationship, and not everyone has a lot of time. And so I'm curious about transactional lending. In Phoenix, in the last year and a half, we've helped a couple producers get access to inventory financing. And maybe they'll get an order from a customer for, $1,000 worth of something, and they don't have the money to buy the raw ingredients. So we'll front 65% of that, and then they pay us back when they get paid by the vendor when they collect, because sometimes between the time they get the order and the time they get paid is 60 days or 75 days. And this helps with cash flow tremendously. So are you familiar with any groups that are doing purchase order financing or inventory financing like that? Because I'd like to, kind of network with more groups that are doing that. But it's been successful because it's short term. It's not long term. And people can come in and out, because not everybody can tie up their money for 3 years or, so this is very short term financing.
Anybody have any experience with this? Any of you?
I've done it, but with people that I already had a relationship with. But I think it's it sounds like a great idea.
First of all, thanks for sharing, and I commend you what you did after the last gathering. I hope that it inspires a few people in the audience. So really, Roy, great that you did this. Don't you have an investor in your business who bought a piece of equipment and leased it back to you in that way?
Yeah, I do actually. I have an angel who came in a couple years ago, and we have a traditional lease with her. She looked at what a traditional lease was, and then she kind of duplicated it, and it's good for her and it's good for us.
This is even like for a manufacturer. Sometimes the more customers they get, the worse it is, because they get another order, but they're in the middle of this order and they don't have the financing to go out and buy the raw materials. So we provide the raw materials, and this allows them to ramp up their business without it impacting cash flow. But it's very short term,
Like a line of credit.
So I did actually
sort of, kind of, but it's invoice specific. It's
Right. What I've done on that is to work to guarantee the loan with a bank. So the bank does all the work, and the entrepreneur goes through the rigor of that process. I do it only if I have a loan officer that is going to convince me that he or she is going to treat them as if they don't have someone backing the loan, and to really kind of play the heavy. But I think that's a good niche.
I think it's being done. I just realized I did that for a guy with salsas. He needed tomatoes when tomatoes were in, and that's when he got his loan. And then when he came back, after the salsas got made. And so yeah, I guess we all do that. I just don't think of it as inventory. Sure.
One reason it's so important is that as our emerging businesses are trying to convince retailers to trade out a national brand for their brand, delivery is really important. You can't disappoint me. You can never miss a delivery. I would think the retailers, again, a retailer would be a good place the retailer will know if someone is having a problem in that area.
Thank you. Vicki, hey.
Hi, I'm Vicki Robin, Whidbey Island, Washington. And I just wanted to say that another sort of network to slow money is the Local Investing Opportunities Network. And you all probably know about it, but I just wanted to be sure that other people here might know that if there's not a slow money group in your area, there might be a Local Investing Opportunities Network. Look up LION on the web. We have one, and there's a template that they will sell you for a little bit of money so you can start your own group. We have a group on Whidbey Island we started 2 years ago. We have almost $750,000 out in loans. It's individual lenders. It's not a lending group. It's just, I call it speed dating for lending. You know, it's a network of people who want to invest in the community that offers opportunities for people who have businesses to present us with their cool ideas, however half or three-quarter or fully baked they are.
So, you know, we had slow money and you're talking about speed dating?
Speed dating with slow money.
Yeah, anyway, I just wanted to say that there are other sorts of groups that are very interested in supporting community businesses because they want to build their local economy.
So most of us that are operating as network leaders, a lot of us, we actually had a master class, a training class for us before you all got here on Monday. And we talked about this idea of triage, where if, you know, if someone comes to me, I think, well, you know, slow money might work, but actually I haven't got a slow money loan for you, but it turns out our credit union would be a good match for you, or there's this crowdsourced funding program called Community Source Capital in Seattle, or there's the Lion up there. And so it behooves us all to know as much about each other as we can. And Michael Bartner, who is on staff with at national office, usually if you can email him from wherever you are in the country and say, is there anything you know that's going on? You know, he tries very hard to keep his finger on the pulse as well. Any other thoughts? It's probably Michael at slowmoney.org.
I grew up in Europe. Speed dating is a strange concept to me.
I think we got two more, and then we're probably going to finish up here.
Hi, my name is Ryan Rose. I'm from Albany, New York. I'm here from the Honest Way Food Cooperative. To answer the last gentleman's question, there is a co-op in Buffalo that does something like he's talking about. My question is, we're interested in doing some funding for small enterprises, vendors, farmers. I was wondering what your vetting process is like. And I'm sorry if you covered this earlier. I came from another
Okay,
meeting.
so we had a question about due diligence, and the answers were kind of all over the place. And I guess I would suggest find us later, and we'll each share. Some of us do a lot of due diligence. You know, some of us do. Chuck had a great answer, which is build a relationship first, and then when you've built that relationship, then make the loan. So intuition, lots of different things. But we need to get a network going in Albany, so let's do that. I grew up about an hour away from there.
One quick thing you might do in your situation is to develop a relationship with a co-op or an independent local bank where they would do the due diligence and then you would guarantee the loan. Then it introduces a level of professionalism to what's going on, and you're introducing, you know, an emerging business to a bank. The credit union or the small bank would like the business because there isn't the risk, and the person that you're lending to, it works for them because ultimately they can wean you can wean them off of the guarantee, and you know then the bank, you can let the bank do the you know the credit checks and sort of all that stuff. Just from a process standpoint, it may make it easier for you.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Christian Tioye. I'm one of the Berry scholars from St. Catherine. I'm originally from West Africa, so I kind of have two questions. The first one is if you invest in anything outside of the USA, and I'm thinking about places in Africa, and if not, if there's that possibility. And my second question is whether you talked about how about relationship investments. I wanted to know if it was easier to invest in someone you already have a relationship, but who may not have that kind of entrepreneurial mindset, or if it's better to invest in someone in the community who is already doing something small, but who you see potential in, and yeah.
Chuck, that's just what you talked about. Go.
Yeah, I think I'd much prefer the second thing as opposed to investing in a friend, because it just, you know, it can get really complicated really fast. I mean, you need, I prefer, and we all have our different styles, and you should have your own style. But I much prefer starting with someone where, it's really kind of a business relationship where we become friends later on, but that, or as we, and I hope to become friends with my people, but I really don't want to spoil a friendship that's important to me by, the opportunity for misunderstandings and who's doing who a favor and all that can really kind of get complicated. But that's just, and the right situation where the friend hasn't presented itself, so I can't, and I wouldn't rule out the possibility. I think it's difficult for for a person to make a international loan like that, and I think there's a lot of NGOs that people here invest in that have people, on the ground. What country are you talking about?
Burkina Faso.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've been given so I want to thank you, first of all. Second, I want to remind you that what you're going to do now is go out and, unless Michael was going to say this, but go out and find your people. So there's a wonderful book called Small Stories, Small Changes out there, Big Changes, and there's a chapter by Albert Bates, and the last line of it is, so go find the others. So find your part of the country and put a business card in that box. Remember, if you didn't hear her, Marin's going to make up Google lists so I can find all the Southeast people. That's going to be a way for us to meet each other and network. It's amazing none of you asked about the defaults. Of course, there haven't been any, but if you do want to know the real story on that, I'm happy to share it with you, because we did throw money at people in the beginning. But you've been an incredible audience, and enjoy the rest of the conference.